yeah, I spent 6 months on the ship. Sometimes I was too tired to get off. Sometimes I look forward to sea days. I met some amazing people from Mauritius, India, the Philippines, and Britain. I learned a lot about cultures and other people, loads of experiences that I would never have experienced had I not got on that ship. On my first tour, I spent 6 months. I came back, I was home for 3 months, and then I went back on my second tour. I was there for 7 weeks and I had to come home to have an operation. I was completely gutted because that ship was going on a world cruise to Australasia. I thought that I would spend 4 months home, have that operation, and then go back, but it didn't work out that way. My first operation was cancelled for 6 months. I'd exhausted all of my staying options because I'd give everything up. So I had to declare myself homeless. So I went to shelter. Shelter referred me to Manchester City Council. And then from there, Manchester City Council found me a place in a hotel called the Imperial Hotel across the road from the hospital. I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's not going to be that bad. Boy, was I wrong. It was a mixed hotel. So there was women in there with young children. There was people that had left prison. There was young girls, young boys, people seeking asylum. I got the pleasure of sharing a bathroom with a young lad who would bring his girlfriend upstairs for a nice time most nights, and I would get the pleasure of listening to that. I was told that this accommodation would be my home for the duration of my time in homeless accommodation, so I had to make this small room with a sink with a hole in it, questionable red marks on the wall, and there was one brown curtain, one side of a brown curtain that they cut in the middle to make it look like it was two curtains. One of the hostels that I stayed in, there was 33 other residents, because I'd moved, after that I'd moved 3 times. So one of the hostels that I stayed in, there was 33 other residents. They were all women, and to stay there you had to have a full duty because the rents were so high. I was lucky because I was having an operation that I had full duty, but there was women in there that didn't have full duty. So I witnessed them having to, be on the phone to the doctor and make it be known that they were going to get that full duty, because the top and bottom of it is, if your rent isn't paid, then you can't stay in there. I also got the impression that this accommodation for these women was their home, that, if something was going wrong for them, that they would be able to just go to this hostel, because you didn't have to present at Manchester City Council to go there. You could just go straight there. So it was always like a safe haven for them. And I kept thinking, like, what would need to change for these women, for this not to be a revolving door, for them to kind of not accept this as life? Because for me, touch wood, this was the only time that I was going to experience this. And I just kept thinking, why do they just take it on board that this is their life? And I thought, what do they need? And I thought, because I'd just come off cruise ships, I thought that a holiday of a lifetime, polar opposite to the life that they've got, would make the difference. They'd get to see loads of amazing places in such a short space of time. So I did some research, and I found there was a researcher called Karen Broadhurst who researches reoccurring pregnancies in young women, because I found out that some of these women had been through the care system. And the 16 to 18-year-olds, predominantly the ones that will end up pregnant within the first 10 to 18 months of leaving care, and their children have a high outcome of becoming looked after children within the first 5 years. I did some more research and I found that currently, present day, there's 80,000 young people and children in the care system. 1,040 of those young people are in Manchester. 30,000 came into care in 2019, 2020, and 29,000 left. 15,700 left with no education, and 6% of the total number, 660, they left with in higher education, and 12,430 went missing from secure units, independent living, and foster care units. And In the process of that, the government spent 476 million on children's social care, 822 million on adult social care, and 8.9 billion on children's services. That's not including the money that comes from the NHS, Public Health England, private funders, the Department of Education. All this money that's spent, and the outcomes for these young women just seem to be getting worse. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of recommendations out there and reports saying something needs to change, but nothing does, from the NHS, the criminal justice system, the council, schools, social services. 8.1 billion was spent on children to adult mental health. These, for me, some of these young women are treated like second-class citizens, and there's an unconscious bias that surrounds them, that they will end up either pregnant or in prison. The outcomes for these young women will always be the same. If you've only ever had one option, the outcome will always be the same. Albert Einstein says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So what needs to change? Something radical needs to change. Who's funded? Why they're funded? The questions need to be asked. Why do you want to look after our most vulnerable? And in some cases, you know, if you're privileged enough to look after our most vulnerable in society, you should be made to do a course, an intensive course, and sit an element of that every single year to remind you why you're here and what you've come here to do. We have key workers that are paid less, you know, really poorly, and they have to do some training to look after, to prove that they can look after our most vulnerable. But yet you might get a developer or somebody who knows somebody on the board who can just rock up and say, you know, I'm not really bothered about the outcomes of these people, these young people or young women. What I am bothered about is the high ticket price by housing these people brings, and the guaranteed income that it generates. Meanwhile, they get rich, their families have a nice life, and these young women outcomes just keep getting worse, and they're left to fend for themselves, in some cases prison homeless or pregnant. Lindy Bright said that these young women, young people walk around like the world and people owe them a favour. And I think that they do. I think that they've got a right to. I think because without their experience, some people wouldn't have their amazing lifestyles. So I think that it's about time that we started having a bit more respect for these young people, their experiences. What would happen if we, when young women were leaving care, we sent them on a holiday of a lifetime so that they could experience that feeling you get when you're on a plane and that anticipation you feel about where you're going? What would happen if we spent the money on allowing them to experience that feeling you get when you step out of the airport and you feel that first gust of heat on your skin? What would happen if we allowed them to experience that feeling you get of excitement when you're taking the journey from the airport to the hotel, that anticipation about the next 2 weeks, what amazing things might happen, and the relief that you're away from your life, allowing them to experience that, watching the sunset and watching it glisten on the sea, or even experience that feeling you get when you're watching the sunrise, just like the people who live opulently do, off the income they generate of looking after these our young people whose outcomes are very poor. So Ken Robinson says we have to recognise that human flourishing is not a mechanical process, it's an organic process, and you cannot predict the outcomes of human development. All you can do, like a farmer, is create the conditions under which they will begin to flourish. What would happen if we took that advice and leaving care did not mean a revolving door of these three outcomes: prison, homeless, or reoccurring pregnancies? What I wanted to do when I first started was I wanted to take women of my age away on a cruise ship for 4 months, and for us to do personal development, yoga, loads of healing, sing kumbaya, eat plant-based foods. And in those surroundings, ask them, you know, when you was young, what is it that you wanted? Because I believe that if they've seen something different and they felt and experienced something completely different, then they'd be open to the opportunities and the possibilities that things could possibly change. But what I realized I was doing was what I felt was what they would want, which is a cruise ship, and do all of these things on a cruise ship. I mean, who wouldn't want to spend 2-3 weeks on a cruise ship, waking up in a different port every single day? But that was my idea of an amazing time. And what I was doing in that, I was taking that journey away, that learning away from them, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I had some conversations with a few people, and I told them what I wanted to achieve. And out of that, Benevolent Life Change Alternative Education House was born. So the idea is, because it's still an idea, is that this house is modelled on a sorority house model. And there is a house mother, and that house mother will teach life skills to these young women. The idea is that the life skills will run alongside the national curriculum, allowing for the young women to learn and achieve academic qualifications in the 2 years that they are in the house. By the end of the 2 years, the women will be better prepared for independent living and support, and have a support system and network around them like other young women do, so that they can flourish. Chelsea, a care leaver, said, being 16, you are a vulnerable age to be living independently. The house will have house lessons based on life skills development, such as maths, economics. So maths economics is my house project, and how it will work is that we will ask the question, what do you need to make your house a home? And if they say a 30-inch television, that costs £1,000, that's okay, because that's your home. You can have whatever you want in there. But how are you going to pay for it? You only get £380 a month on universal credit. You pay all your bills and you're left with £50 at the end of the month. How are you going to pay for it? And the idea is for them to start thinking about getting a job and the benefits of getting a job. And we thought that if they needed to build skills that they weren't confident in, as an example, administration, we would find them some volunteer work. And what we would do is we would give them virtual money to put in a virtual bank that they could watch grow, of the equivalent of the money that they would make if they were in that type of job anyway. And the outcome for that is teaching them how to budget, but not only that, allowing them to get obsessed with saving, because they'd be able to watch that money grow. The next one is history. So it's history of self. Manchester has an amazing history, and everybody that's born in Manchester is a part of that history, and it would be good for them to understand where they fit in. So if they come from Clayton, we'd research Clayton and understand where, allow them to see at what age they were born, what year they were born, what was going on in that year, and also do timeline therapy so that they can understand what you needed as a child, what maybe you didn't get, what you need to get now for you to be able to flourish and succeed. And the outcome is so that they understand their history and understand where they fit in, and history of self. The next one is geography. So geography is my house project, my holiday project. And at the beginning, I was doing what I wanted to do, and I wanted them to go through the ocean. So the question this time was, where do you get your passport from? And so we get a passport. And then I thought, well, what would I do? And what did other people do when they're going on holiday or thinking about it? They go to the travel agents and they get those brochures and they get excited about where they're going to go. And I wanted them to kind of experience that and look at cultures and look at different types of food that they might want to try. And the outcome of that is for them to get excited about going somewhere, and dreams and imagine and hope. And the next one is come dine with me, home economics. Everyone has a little bit of come dine with me in them, and there's a culinary genius in us all. The best stories happen at the kitchen table. So they're expected to cook one day a week, and at the end of every single month they don't have to, but we would expect them to participate in a come dine with me evening where everybody has to cook. And so this allows them to be creative and take pride in something for others, and also be scored on the food that they may have decided that they've looked in a brochure and they want to try that food and allow everybody else to try it. But the outcome is giving and receiving feedback. Some of these young women may have only ever had or heard bad feedback, and this was for them to hear it, receive it, understand it, and respond. But not only that, understand that feedback is good and it can help you to develop and grow. The next one is my art therapy, and we was going to use their house to allow them to heal, well, use art therapy to decorate their house and get creative. English is reading and writing personal development books, and journaling, and listening, talking and telling their story. And the outcome is helping them become the person that they was meant to be, because let's face it, nobody was born to be broken, exploited, homeless or imprisoned. Benevolent Life Change is a sorority house that is about teaching young women how to be a family, how to be supported and feel supported. Then the plan is for the young women after their first year to start mentoring the next cohort of young women, so that they're ready to enter the house. The outcome of that is leadership. The long-term vision is for us to have loads of different cohorts of houses and build a support network for all of these young women. They will build relationships, and they could quite possibly, after their 2 years, move in with somebody within that cohort of housing. Benevolent Life, what Benevolent Life Change isn't, it isn't after 2 years we say to you goodbye. It's basically you become part of the Benevolent Life Change family. And if they ever feel like they need to lend a £5, we'll be able to turn around and say you can borrow that £5. I mean, we're hoping that they won't have to, but the idea is that they need to, they feel comfortable enough to be able to ask. We're looking to build a table that's big enough for everyone to sit round. Benevolent Life Change is about helping young women understand and find out their why you go to work, why personal development is important, so that they can live and fulfill and contribute to society, the NHS. What's my call to action? Follow our social media sites, Instagram. There's nothing going on at the moment, but when there is, we want people to hold us accountable for everything that we've said. Things might change, but our values should always stay the same. Given all the money that's spent, why can't we spend money on something like this and go the extra mile for these young women? So Ken Robinson said, the fact is that given the challenges we face, education doesn't need to be reformed, it needs to be transformed. Thank you.